We are breaking down the AFC East draft classes in 2023. The Bills, the Patriots, the Dolphins, the Jets. Very interesting division. How is this thing looking in 2023 and beyond for the AFC East? Coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look into the NFL on the field and in the front office. With elite breakdowns, next-level analysis, and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on that journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. Okay, Matt, as we've been doing, we've kind of been looking at the salary cap situations for these teams because it's all tied in, right? We've got current needs, future needs, and a lot of times, Matt, it's not just, okay, we're going to draft this position because it's our need right now. We're going to draft this position because we got a guy in the last year of a contract. That's a need for next year, and we want this player to be developed. So it all ties in together, as does the salary cap. So what are we talking about with the AFC East salary cap before we jump into that Buffalo Bills draft class?
Yeah, I think this one's really interesting, and not so much for right now and this year. I'll buzz through those real quick. The Bills in Miami have like $3 million right now under the cap, so that's going to get their rookies and maybe finagle some things around for in-season moves, but they're pretty dried up. The Jets are slightly better. They have 7.6. That's fine. You can live with that. New England's the best. They have a little over 12. Okay, that's a nice chunk for right now, but it's not insane, and you can roll it over. But next year, I think, is really, really exciting for this division. I mean, it's obviously a highly competitive division, might be the best division in the league right now. These teams, especially the non-Patriots, are really in it to win it. But that reflects in next year's cap, too. So a year from there, when the season ends, the Bills will be minus 2.9. So they don't have a lot of flexibility. I think what you see is what you get from Buffalo. The Dolphins are minus 14.7. That's 28th. I mean, they're in bad shape for next year's cap. The Jets are even worse shape. They're minus 41.2. The only three teams are worse. You notice I didn't mention the Patriots. Patriots have $133 million in cap space. Only one team has more. So maybe this is a down year or two for Belichick's troops, but if they can weather the storm and maybe Mac Jones is a guy or maybe he isn't, they got a lot of cards in their hands going forward now.
Yeah, I can't wait to see what 3 tight ends they sign next offseason.
Exactly right. Let's see if they use it properly, but yeah.
Well, what's tough is there's fewer and fewer with the salary cap going back up now after the lull and the plateau during the pandemic. And post-pandemic, I think there's going to be fewer and fewer players hitting free agency in a lot of ways. So it's
you're right.
Hard, and the teams that are spending have a lot of money. So you're going to see guys getting a lot of overpayments in free agency. And the name of the game right now is going to be get as many stars as you can on your team and pay your own, I think is the way to go. And we're seeing that from a lot of teams and, maybe trading for expensive players rather than signing those expensive players, because this offseason there was not a lot of high-end talent available to sign. So what's that $130 million going to do for you?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, yes, that's encouraging from the Patriots' perspective, but it'd be better if they drafted better. You know what I mean?
I would rather have to sign a $50 million quarterback than than want to trade my quarterback and have $130 million in cap space.
I mean, I guess the one encouraging thing is, well, they could make that A.J. Brown trade or the Tyreek trade. Like they could be the team that says, oh, you don't want DeAndre Hopkins? We'll take him off your hands for a 5th-round pick, and we have plenty of cap space to do it. Those type of things.
And look, a bad experiment last year. Patriots going to be in a lot better place offensively, and Mac Jones will be, just because Bill O'Brien's in town, right? So that's
I think so.
A projected step up here. We'll look at the Patriots roster coming up in their draft. Let's start with the Buffalo Bills, though, who went tight end, Matt. In the first round of the NFL draft, Dalton Kincaid out of Utah, picked 26 in round 1, the first tight end off the board. I want to just stop there because we need to spend some time here. Did they even draft a tight end is my question. Is this wide receiver 2 for Josh Allen going forward?
I think so. I mean, the way I'm viewing this, and trust me, this has some fantasy implications. Rookie tight ends don't ever do anything. A lot of first-round busts at tight end. I get all that. I really do. But I think they're looking at it through this lens, and I think this is a lens we need to look at it, is Kincaid versus Cole Beasley, Shakir, all these slot receivers they've tried, these small slots. Beasley's the best example. That if I keep Gabe Davis and Diggs on the outside, beating up on man coverage, and this guy becomes my new slot, often with Knox on the field as well, that makes them a much better football team to me.
And look, he might be more of a backup tight end and not get a lot of play as a rookie. And we know what it looks like for tight ends. We know what it's looked like for first-round tight ends throughout history.
Brutal, yeah.
Feels a little bit different. And clearly the Buffalo Bills are trying to find Josh Allen his Travis Kelce, basically, right? That's what you're hoping Dalton Kincaid is, because he's not a good blocker. So, and he better be getting open a lot, making a lot of first downs, a lot of big third down catches. That's why you drafted Dalton Kincaid. So I for sure look at this going forward as being more of a wide receiver 2 than a tight end necessarily for, but a player that he could block a little bit. He's a big guy. But that's what's key is him as a pass catcher. And I do think that we'll see him being the second leading receiver on this team by year 2 of his career. And who knows, maybe he becomes the number 1 long-term for Josh Allen, as Stephon Diggs starts to age out, toward the end of his career. And that's the end. Yeah, so we'll see what that ends up looking like. And maybe and just from a dynasty perspective, really quick, Matt, because you do a ton of dynasty stuff. Everybody listen to Locked On Dynasty podcast right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, featuring one Matt Williamson. Does he rank ahead of some or all of the wide receivers because of that fact for you from a dynasty perspective from this draft class?
Maybe. I think it's not Smith-Njigba. I mean, in non-super flex, Smith-Njigba is pretty set as the third guy behind Gibbs at 2, Bijan at 1. And I'm on board with that. Kincaid versus Johnston, Flowers, Addison, to me, is very much a debate and maybe what you need. I mean, there is a tight end shortage in fantasy right now, but they're riskier than receivers. So non-fantasy, I just pulled up the first round just to double check. I think it would have been interesting had there not been that run of receivers. Like, I don't think Smith-Njigba ever gets to 24 or 25 where they took Kincaid. But would they rather have Kincaid? And where I'm going with this is, were the Bills just set on getting Josh a pass catcher? Could it have been Johnston, Flowers, Addison, Kincaid? We just don't care. We're drafting a pass catcher with our first pick no matter what.
I have a feeling that was the case.
Me too.
They had pass catchers ranked, and Dalton Kincaid was the best of them. And best of them left for sure at 26. He might have been the best of them left. He might have been the number
first
2
on their list. We don't know.
Might have been 1. Might have been 1 or 2 on their list for sure.
And they did move up to get him, right? Because they did not pick 25th originally.
Yes, they moved up a spot with the Jacksonville Jaguars, I believe.
Yeah.
Moved down. Yeah, because they wanted to get ahead of the Dallas Cowboys, right?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Because everyone thought the Cowboys were going tight end there in round 1.
And they did in the second round.
Taking a look at the rest of the draft for the Buffalo Bills, O'Cyrus Torrence, nice pick, a starting offensive guard out of Florida in round 2, late in round 2 as well. Dorian Williams in the 3rd round, Tulane inside linebacker, tall wide receiver out of Florida in round 5. Justin Shorter, 6'4", 229. Nick Broker, Ole Miss guard, so going 2 guards in this class. In the 7th round, Alex Austin, a corner from Oregon State in round 7.
So I don't know much. I didn't know much about Broker, the 7th round guard, but it's been a lot of people have kind of come out of the woodwork since his pick saying this guy might be an NFL starter at some point. Like, oh, okay, we'll see. But I'm pretty certain Torrance is, and that's my favorite. Well, maybe Kincaid's my favorite pick of the draft, but I like their first 2. And a big thing I've been harping on since the season ended for the Bills is they need to realize that they're going to be winning games a lot. They need to realize they play in one of the worst weather situations in the league, especially in the playoffs, and they need to save Allen's body a little bit. So a power running game needs to be employed, and we can argue about the backs. I mean, they got what's-his-face Harris from the Patriots, fine. They don't have a lot of cap space. They're not going to spend on backs, but going and getting Torrance makes me think maybe they realize that too.
All around, a decent draft class there. I
Yeah.
like the value. Torrance is my favorite pick, getting him in round 2, getting a starting guard there late round 2 for them. And then, Kincaid, we'll see what that looks like. A no-block tight end round 1. I know a lot of people have been really high on Kincaid. I haven't been as high because, there was no testing numbers because of the injury, and he's not an imposing figure. It's like he's got to be just awesome. He's got to be such a good pass catcher, such a good player getting open and making plays, because I'm not sure what his trait that makes him a first-round guy if he's not going to be much of a blocker as a tight end. So I'm kind of looking at it, squinting a little bit with Kincaid, but I'll trust the scouts on Kincaid, and everyone seemed to just love him. So, and it's nice to have Josh Allen as your quarterback to make good on that.
The one buzz I heard about Kincaid, and I can't confirm this, I'm not a reporter, but there was some worry that he can get too light. This whole process while he's dealing with injuries, not playing. Like I've heard people say, like, he's walking around at 230 right now. I'm like, ooh, that's a little worrisome.
Yeah, and so that mixed with not knowing what his testing was.
Right. So there are concerns, but the tape is very good.
And then the track record on tight ends. And then you're talking about a team that's winning a lot. So do you go positional value heavy? Well, and that's what the Bills had done, but haven't hit on a lot of guys. So maybe they're like, let's stop with this, leftovers at defensive line. Let's go get a tight end that we love. Let's get a pass catcher that we love.
I guess since you mentioned it, the first we picked are tight end, guard, off the ball linebacker, not exactly position. If we're going to kill the Bills or the Lions for that, maybe we should be hard on the Bills too.
And that's the question for the Lions too. Did they draft a running back, or did they draft an OW, offensive weapon? Did they draft a receiver there too in Gibbs? And so this really odd class of skill position guys on offense.
It really is.
Next, we've got the Miami Dolphins. We've got the New England Patriots and the New York Jets from the AFC East draft reviews. But today's episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. How much time do you spend on yourself in a given week versus how much time do you spend on other people? And how do you balance the two? Do you even balance the two at all? And a lot of people don't. They spend their entire day, their entire week on everybody else and kind of leave themselves out of it, right? It's so easy to get caught up on what everyone else needs from you and never take a moment to think about what you need from yourself. But when we spend all of our time giving, it can leave us feeling a little stretched thin and burned out. Therapy can give you the tools to find more balance in your life so you can keep supporting others without leaving yourself behind. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists at any time for no additional charge. Find more balance with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Here we go, Matt. Taking a look at the Miami Dolphins here in the AFC. Is the Miami Dolphins up next? Where am I at?
Yeah, they're next. They're ahead of the two ends. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah,
Miami conversation. 4 picks.
Right over them because they didn't have any draft picks, man. We got the Dolphins only made 4 selections in this draft, and obviously they have some players on their roster to show for why they only had 4 picks in this draft. They drafted in the 2nd, 3rd, 6th, and 7th, and that's it. And I think so far the only team that we've seen that did not have a single pick they made that they had traded to get that pick. None of these picks were traded into or out of. Obviously, the picks they didn't use, they did trade out of. But they started their draft off at number 20 in the 2nd round, which was South Carolina cornerback Cam Smith. Devin Achane, I just want to go through the class real quick. We'll talk about it because there's not that much. Devin Achane, Texas A&M running back, speed merchant in round 3. Clearly a lot of speed there on that Miami Dolphins team, and that was that's been basically one of the biggest factors for them building this roster over the last few years. Elijah Higgins, listed as a wide receiver. I have a feeling he's going to be a move tight end in the NFL out of Stanford.
Sneaky for fantasy. He's listed at tight end. Keep an eye at that guy.
There you go. And then Ryan Hayes in the 7th round, Michigan offensive tackle. So is Higgins getting the tight end listing already?
Yeah. So for Dynasty and stuff, I'm trying to grab him late because he really is he's a 225-pound receiver. And I mean, who knows if he'll play or not, but I mean, in the last round of your rookie draft, grab Elijah Higgins because he's a good athlete, tested well, good receiver, and you might get tight end eligibility out of him.
I think, and Ryan Hayes, I have not watched the Michigan offensive tackle much, the 6th rounder, 6'6", 298 pounds. So I cannot comment much on that selection. It's a 7th-round pick, late 7th-round pick. So he's going to be fighting to make a roster spot there on a pretty good roster in Miami. But they do have some space on the offensive line. Let's focus on the first 2 picks now here with Cam Smith and Devin Achane, specifically Achane. He's an interesting player because ridiculous amount of speed, right? But he's clearly 5'8" or 5'9", 188. He's not a big guy. He's never going to carry the load. So you are betting on him being, a change of pace guy, and 3rd round feels a little high, but man, he's one of the most explosive change of pace guys in this draft.
Yes. And harping on dynasty too much, but like I was very low on him in my pre-draft dynasty ranks. Frankly, small running backs just don't put up fantasy points. It's a direct correlation, but I caveated that. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but unless he goes to Miami, because Miami, in a Raheem Mostert kind of way, I think we'll get the most out of this guy. And I know there's a bunch of people on the depth chart already, but I don't think any of them are good. And they value speed so well, and they get spacing and all the play design that you know so well from the Niners situation. I think they get the most production out of him at any landing spot possible.
I do trust Mike McDaniel to find a way to get the ball in his hands, and he's a good receiver, and he's a kick returner. So bonus if you play in a dynasty league or a fantasy league that has return yardage, because maybe you can get more value out of him there. But he's only going to be, a change of pace, 3rd down back type of guy, and I don't know how good of a pass blocker he is. And that's a huge part of being that 3rd down role. And sometimes rookies, if they don't see the field a lot, it's because they can't pass protect, and somebody else is ahead of them on the depth chart. So we'll see what it looks like with Devin Achane, but clearly speed, and clearly if he's able to hit some of those outside zone runs, find that crease, get the ball as a receiver, catch and run stuff, return man, versatile player in that regard, not a every down running back. 3rd round feels high. So, obviously you're not going to give the Miami Dolphins a great grade in this draft just because they didn't have very many picks. So, Bradley Chubb and everything else they've done on this team to get here, this was more about a class of kind of supplementing the talent on their roster than adding big time producers, except maybe a 2nd rounder Cam Smith, who's got some traits at 6'1", 180, the corner.
People were all over the board on this guy. I mean, this time last year he was on 1st round, way too early mocks. He's a highly recruited guy, certainly traits. First off, my biggest criticism of this draft was they didn't go O-line earlier. I thought 51 was going to be an O-lineman almost no matter what. I assumed they looked at Smith and said, he's too good to pass up. But he struggles in man, and I've heard he's not a lot of fun to be around and not very coachable and didn't interview well. Do they care? Maybe not. Just go cover that dude. But I think that's why he fell.
Yeah, maybe being behind Jalen Ramsey too will help him and be like, okay, you can be brash and you can be a certain type of way, but you got to handle it on the field. And so he's going to be playing behind those guys. They've got Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey, so he doesn't need to be big in year 1. Interesting because they could also put him outside and move around Jalen Ramsey in the slot, which
he does more than anything anymore. Right. I mean, I think that's the beauty of it. Everyone just thinks Ramsey's going to lock down Garrett Wilson twice a year. That's not what Ramsey does anymore. He plays line of scrimmage.
Fun division and a fun team in the Miami Dolphins. Not a lot to talk about with their draft class. There's a lot more to talk about with the New England Patriots draft class, who started it out at pick 17 after moving back with your Steelers, Matt, from pick 14 and drafting Oregon cornerback Christian Gonzalez. I think that was a master stroke. This is one of those trades. I loved it for both teams. And usually I like the trade down more than the trade up, but I liked the trade up for the Steelers because what they were able to get. And it's something that's not easy to find in someone who's that talented as an offensive tackle. And then for the Patriots, who run as much man coverage as anybody, to be able to get a guy who's as talented as Christian Gonzalez at pick 17, I love that for them too.
So we were on the air live at the Steelers facility when they made the trade, and we just kept going back and forth. Did the Steelers trade up for Jones or Gonzalez? Jones or Gonzalez? And I would have been equally happy with both. They were the Steelers' 2 biggest needs, but New England sits back and gets the other one, you know what I mean? And picks up a 4th round pick, I think it was, in the mix, so good for them. Corner is a position that they stress quite a bit. You mix him with Keon White in the 2nd round. And I've been very critical of the Patriots team building, drafting, but I'll be honest, when I pull their depth chart up on defense now, there might not be a lot of stars that everyone knows, but maybe Gonzalez turns into that guy. And I don't even care if they do. And I don't think Belichick does either. But they've got like 18 really interesting defensive players, and Bill's going to use them in so many ways. I think their defense has a chance to be one of the best in the league.
Yeah, and they can cover. They already got the Joneses back there, and they got a lot of guys with different shapes, and none of them as traitsy as Christian Gonzalez. So
yeah,
I like it. And there's a reason maybe that Christian Gonzalez fell, that maybe teams knew about, that the rest of us didn't really know about. But 17 feels like way too low for what Christian Gonzalez could be as a corner.
I heard not the greatest interview, and some people care about this and some don't. Doesn't love to tackle as corners go either, but if you can cover, who cares? And they play so much man. And again, I mean, Keon White, and I think you were really high on Mapu too, from Sacramento State.
I was, and
those guys do everything.
Marte Mapu over here locally, Sacramento State, West Coast guy. I was shocked how early he went, but it's a classic Bill Belichick pick.
Really is.
He's going to play a lot of special teams early. You remember when they drafted the safety out of the small school, Duggar, a couple of years ago?
Absolutely, same type
really
of deal.
High, yeah. So 6'3", 217, 221. I've seen a couple of weights on him. And athletic guy. Does he become the next Fred Warner, who was drafted in a similar spot in the 3rd round? I don't know about that, but he's got that length and that athletic ability to match up with positionless offenses and tight ends and running backs and cover out of the slot. He played safety. He played linebacker. I think he's going to be a linebacker in the NFL. So maybe after a year of, putting on 5 pounds, it doesn't need to be huge. 225 is just fine for a linebacker this day and age, and then play a lot of special teams in between. A Bill Belichick special there in Marte Mapu.
So you said a lot of great stuff there that I want to piggyback off of. Is I mentioned they have 18 impressive defensive players. 4 of them are safety linebacker tweeners. You know what I mean? Like, they just collect these guys and use them extremely well. And I'm glad you brought up special teams, not because they drafted a kicker and a punter. We can argue that all you want, but they had 12 picks and 2 of them were specialists. But this is a Football Outsiders thing. And I'm the first to tell you I don't watch special teams tape. But since I've been doing this for a living, I cheat off Pro Football Focus and Football Outsiders for special teams ranks. And there's been one constant basically for 2 decades is the Ravens and the Patriots are always top 5 in special teams. Everyone else is all over the place. Some have bad years, some have good years. Well, the Patriots were like 30th this year, and Bill ain't having it.
Yeah, no, that is not going to I don't care if we only win 7 games and we don't have a quarterback that we like. We will not be bad on special teams, guys.
No chance.
All right, I want to talk about the rest of this Patriots class because it is a big one, and then we'll finish up with the New York Jets next. But first, I want to thank everybody for making Peacock and Williamson your first listen every day here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're trying to build up that YouTube channel, so even if you don't watch YouTube a lot, make sure you head over to the Peacock and Williamson YouTube channel and hit subscribe. Hit that notification bell so you know when we go live. We're going to be doing live shows and some having some fun, some live Q&As to go along with our mailbag episodes here throughout the offseason and in the on-season as well on Peacock and Williamson. Shout out to the everydayers out there. Mailbag show tomorrow at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL. Jump on the live show with us or drop a comment on YouTube with your question. Okay. New England Patriots. Yeah, you mentioned special teams there, and that's a lot of what this draft was about outside of the first couple of picks. They did draft a center out of Troy, Jake Andrews, in the 4th round. They had 3 4th-round picks, a 5th, and then I think 5 6th-round picks or something like that. But this was interesting because this happened a couple of years ago, by the way, with the Niners and the Patriots, because the 49ers drafted a 4th-round punter, Mitch Wishnowsky, in 2019. And I was like, what are you doing drafting a 4th round? That's way too high.
Right.
They wanted to get it. They wanted the best punter that they thought, the guy they thought was the best punter in the draft. And they got him early because they knew other teams, and it was the Patriots that drafted a punter in the next round, round 5. And it looks like
they don't want to pay a veteran
because at least Mitch Wishnowsky stuck, and Jake Bailey has now left the building, and the Patriots have now drafted another punter, Bryce Behringer, out of Michigan State in the 6th round. But the Niners and Patriots did the same thing this year, but at kicker, where the Niners, inexplicably to me, drafted a kicker in the 3rd round, Jake Moody, because they wanted the best one. They knew some other teams were going to potentially draft a kicker. There were so many teams that needed a kicker coming in the draft, which was kind of a surprising thing this day and age. And so what did the Patriots do in the 4th round? About 15 picks later, they traded up to draft the next kicker, Chad Ryland, out of Maryland. So, yeah, definitely they care about special teams.
They sure do. I have no idea if that punter and kicker are any good, but I'll defer to them, and great. I do think the last note I really have on this team is after using a 1st-round pick on Cole Strange, did you really need to take 3 interior offensive linemen in the 4th and 5th rounds? Probably not.
Yeah, so they drafted 3 interior offensive linemen and 3 corners. Now, some of those late, a 6th and 7th.
And they're special teamers too, those corners. But yeah,
right,
exactly.
That's true.
Right. But
and so
the interior line just tells me I want Ramondre Stevenson on my fantasy team. They're going to play defense. They're going to win on special teams, and they're going to run the ball up the gut. You know what I mean? Like, I know exactly what they are.
And
they'll change week to week.
Those names are City Sal from Eastern Michigan.
I like
guard.
him, yeah.
Antonio Mafi, who's a bully of a guard from UCLA. Keyshawn Boot, LSU wide receiver in the 6th round. We talked about Behringer in the 6th there. Demario Douglas, Liberty, little fast wide receiver, return man, special teams. Out of Liberty, he was Willis's big receiver there at Liberty last year. Had a better year last year with Willis as his quarterback.
I bet he's a returner, just a hunch.
Right, yeah, a lot of speed. 5'8", 179.
Yep, special teams.
Amir Speed, corner out of Michigan State in round 6, and Isaiah Bolden, Jackson State corner, round 7. That is the Patriots draft. I
lied. I have one other note. I think it's Boutte, the receiver out of LSU. This time last year, they were talking about him like he was Smith-Njigba. Like, this guy's an easy first-round pick, tested horrible, had a terrible year. I guess LSU had a miserable year. So, in the 6th round, worth a flyer.
Yeah, a couple of shorter wide receivers, maybe slotty types of wide receivers there after last year drafting a guy with 4.3, 4.2 speed that's a pure X outside type of receiver.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about these New York Jets here, Matt. Obviously, big story of the weekend for them was getting Aaron Rodgers, right? So they got that figured out. Part of that was a pick swap, and I wonder if the Steelers stole their guy in the 1st round going up and getting
I'm certain they did.
Yeah. And they ended up with Will McDonald. And at first it was like, okay, Will McDonald, not crazy. The people had him in the 1st round, late 1st rounder, a little bit of an undersized edge rusher at Iowa State. He played this weird 5 technique role, even though he's only 239 pounds, 6'4", 239, long arms, really explosive player. I do have a feeling though, a lot of people would have looked at him differently if he was on a different team playing a different scheme. Because he has what treats to be one of the top guys. And he ended up going 15 picks higher than Nolan Smith with a similar profile. And I have a feeling that maybe, the Jets don't feel as weird about settling, quote unquote, on Will McDonald at pick 15 as the rest of us did when we saw them make that pick on draft day.
I think their intentions were, we're going to get Aaron a center and a tackle. Damn, our tackle just got swiped. So we'll keep a strength of strength in very Niner fashion. Give me another defensive lineman. I love McDonald, and I think he's very much worth the 15th pick. But you're right. I mean, they played a 3-man front, and he would play a 4-eye sometimes where they're asking him to be like Richard Seymour, lining up like on the inside shoulder of the tackle. So they're going to put him on the edge and let him scream off there, and it'll go a lot better. I
mean, that conference, this is why
it's so weird. Yeah.
I'm a big NFL fan. College football is
they're
my
2 different games
to me. I don't care about. My school didn't even have a football team at
me either. Right,
San Francisco State, go Gators. And so I don't have any rooting interest at all. When I watch college football, it is purely, are these guys NFL players, and do I like them as NFL players? And when you watch some of these conferences where they're just so spread out and they're running like have 239 pound interior defensive linemen, it's like, how do I even scout this? Like, what is going on here?
Right.
What do I do with this? What are you giving me with this offense that doesn't translate at all into the NFL?
And perfect example is this draft for me is they take 2 Pitt guys in the 4th and 5th round who I worked for 3 years. And I knew way more about them once the draft process started than during the regular season. And I hope Pitt wins every game, but if they don't, I don't lose any sleep over it.
So the Jets didn't draft an offensive tackle in the 1st round, but they did come back and get a tackle in the 4th round in Carter Warren out of Pittsburgh, who was injured last year, but has a lot of length and looks like a guy who could potentially be, 4th round pick, swing tackle. You'd be fine with it, but could even be a starting offensive tackle in the NFL. We'll see what he ends up looking like there. It didn't get a lot of workout numbers on him because of the injury, but tons of length there at tackle out of Pittsburgh. Joe Tittman, Wisconsin center, going pretty high in the 2nd round there. So they obviously liked him a lot. I love this pick in this offense. Izzy Abanaconda, Pittsburgh running back with all kinds of speed. We talked about A-Chain being similar, being Raheem Mostert. I think Izzy Abanaconda looks more Raheem Mostert-ish to me with his build and that speed, one cut guy, and just go. So I like this pick. And in the 5th round, that's a lot of value for me. Zaire Barnes, Western Michigan outside linebacker in the 6th. Jarek Bernard Converse, LSU corner in round 6. And then Zach Kuntz, Old Dominion tight end in round 7. All traits. He looks like Bambi on the field. Like he blew up the combine. Ridiculous. Yeah. He has no idea what he's doing. I was like, is this guy that just like, was a volleyball player for 3 years in college and then walked on because he's so athletic?
That's what he looks like.
Team? Because that's what he looks like on the field. And some people had him going a lot higher because he went crazy at the combine with athleticism and leaping ability, 6'7", 255, but he is a big time work in progress on the field as a tight end.
Oh, I mean, best combine in tight end history. I bet he might not be active for one game this year, and that's fine. Just teach him some stuff, see if you can make it happen.
And it turns out I think you told me this story that I didn't realize about his background is he came from Penn State, right? And so he's been playing tight end for a long time, even though it doesn't look like it.
Yeah, they offered Kyle Pitts is from Philadelphia, and they offered Freiermuth, Pitts, and Kuntz. First two to say yes get to be Nittany Lions, and Pitts was a little slow to the party, so it was Kuntz and Freiermuth. And he couldn't compete with Freiermuth, and so he moved out. And they also had a tight end drafted this year too. So he transferred because there was a lot of good people there, but he still has no idea what he's doing. I mean, he's just a big athlete. Yeah,
Brenton Strange. So he ended up being behind Brenton Strange and Freiermuth on the roster. So he ends up at Old Dominion, and you can kind of see why he wasn't able to beat those guys out. So sometimes these raw projects they make good, and sometimes we'll see. And in the 7th round, that's the right time to do it. Take a flyer on that athletic ability. See if you can coach him up.
And at that position, we've seen in the past, usually mid-round picks, not 7th, but super athletic dudes, sometimes they hit. I mean, Kelsey and Kittle weren't high picks. I'm not saying he's going to be close to that, but it's worth the risk at 220 overall.
Or, I mean, there's a ton of really good undrafted tight ends in the league.
Good point. Yeah. A lot of them are athletes.
Obviously, the key here is Aaron Rodgers. And do you think that the Jets have enough around Aaron Rodgers right now, especially the offensive line I'm looking at, to just jump into it and just be scary in the AFC East?
That to me is a concern. I mean, I expect the defense to be top 10, and that's very, very conservative. Certainly could be top 5. I like the weapons. I think Garrett Wilson's going to have a massive year. Getting Breece Hall back, I think, is huge. And now they have even more insurance with Abaconda, who fits perfectly. To me, the line worries me, and the Rodgers transition worries me a little bit. I think Tippmann's a plug-and-play type center, and with his length, he could even play guard, maybe even right tackle, but, I mean, that's a stretch. I don't think you're going to get anything out of Warren probably this year. I mean, he's all traits, and they need Mekhi Becton to be a dude.
You know what's surprising to me about this draft is they signed Connor McGovern like right before the draft.
Oh, right.
Center. And I thought that was an indication that 2nd round pick was clearly going to go to another team. And so they weren't going to be able to draft a center there. And that was the plan. And so I was kind of half right because they ended up trading one of those 2 2nd round picks to the Packers as part of the Aaron Rodgers swap. But they did still draft a center with with the other 2nd round pick that they still had. So we'll see how quickly Tippmann becomes a starter. But
I hadn't thought of that, but I guess Vera Tucker, as he showed last year, could go to tackle, and Tippmann could go to guard. There's more puzzle pieces at least.
And then Mekhi Becton's still around. They didn't pick up his 5th-year option, but he's in the best shape of his life. And I've seen a picture. Everybody does look good. He's a physically talented guy. If he can stay healthy and he's motivated, he's on the field. I mean, there's your starting tackle there, and that really all of a sudden lines it up for you on the offensive line. So that's a huge key for them.
Huge key for them, and he's. A lot of guys are, and we had this 5th-year, conversation just last week. It's pivotal time for some of these dudes because before you know it, you're in that bust category, even though your career started promising.
All right, we're going to get into the mailbag on tomorrow's episode of Peacock and Williamson, a little Twitter Thursday, and we will go live as well on our YouTube channel. So make sure you're subscribed up, hit the thumbs up. It always helps us, and the notification bell so you know when we do go live and you know when new episodes of Peacock and Williamson are up on the new YouTube channel. Shout out to all the everydayers out there, no matter how you listen or watch, and get those questions in at BD Peacock, at Williamson NFL on Twitter. Matt and I back tomorrow right here. Peacock and Williamson.